whole neighborhood is a church.
People are awful religious in Montana.
Yeah, they are. They're crazy too. Plant all these palm trees in Montana. What are they doing? Good morning. Hello. Goodwill to all men. Oh boy. Is it Christmas?
Actually, we're full of lies and we just went to Florida.
Yep. Florida. That's why I always talk so much shit about Florida, because I don't want people to know that I actually love it. And that's where I'm at. Gotcha. How's life in Egypt, dude? Inshallah, dude. Go inside, D. Go, 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 go. What's with the cotton candy themed clothing? I don't know. I like colors. I like primary colors. I don't like the idea that every day I gotta wear something that's black, you know, or gray. I like colors. You mentioned on the Patreon stream to remind you of Who Let the Dogs Out. Oh yeah, well, that'll have to be for a desktop stream so we can go through and listen to all of them. But that song, it's crazy, dude. Everybody thinks that the Baha Men wrote that song, and everybody knows that song. Who let the dogs out? Who? But there's jazz. There's like this jazz song from like 1930 that's like, who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out? Who? And there's like 15 versions of the song, and nobody knows who wrote the first one. Like nobody can quite figure out where the "Who Let the Dogs Out" meme started. It's crazy. I don't even remember when I looked into that. It might have been a video that I watched years ago or something. Some deep dive. Like, whoa. Yeah, we can go through it. Half of Nirvana Unplugged are covers. Yeah, I know that. I think most people know that. Makes me feel like I'm living in a parallel universe if we don't know where the song came from. I'm telling you, man, if you can figure out where it came from, I'll hear you out. Mr. Priest, the naughtiest priest. Good morning, sir. Thank you as always. Hope you're doing well. Hope life is treating you wonderfully. And all that jazz. And all that jazz. Excuse me. Pardon me. Dude, one of these days, I'm gonna chill with the naughty priest. It's destiny. It has to happen. One of these days. I don't even care if he wants it. I'm gonna show up. I'm gonna show up on Mr. Naughty Priest's farm, and I'm gonna be like, "What's up, dude?" I'm here to help you farm. Paul, why do you clear your band log so often? Do you get joy out of the catch and release game? Yeah. Kinda, yeah. I mean, that's just I get joy. I don't necessarily get joy out of the catch and release, but I get joy out of people bitching about like bands when they've always been super temporary, you know? Like, they've always been a temporary thing. But people will cry about it like, you know, like it's the end of their world. I like that. I like that. I find that fun. I mean, really, nobody's permanent. There's only really one way to clear the band logs, and that's to clear them all at once. So when I do it, I just do the whole thing. There's nobody that's permanent. It has been a couple of months since I cleared the logs, so it's probably about time. Maybe, if I'm feeling gregarious one of these days. But yeah, I mean, YouTube doesn't make it super easy to unban people unless you do it all at once. You can just clear the ban logs, and it takes about a minute to process, and then everybody's fine. That part I think is funny. Who Let the Dogs Out was apparently originally sung by Anselm Douglas, and it was called Doggy. Maybe. If you keep digging, you might find something else, dude. I'm telling you, that song is an enigma wrapped in a riddle, buried underneath a mystery, draped in a conundrum. I think you'll do another public domain movie night again. It's always a risk. Last night, dude, for those of you that missed out, I did a patrons Highdeology, and I queued up a public domain movie for us to watch. Did about an hour of just chit chat, and then we all watched a movie. And dude, I had no clue the movie that I'd picked. I just went on like the public domain site and found one that sounded interesting. I'd heard of it before, The Most Dangerous Game. Dude, that movie was 10 shades of epic. I can't believe I've never seen it. Went and looked later and saw that it was like a 10 out of 10 on Rotten Tomatoes. It's one of like a handful of 10 out of 10 films on Rotten Tomatoes. Never seen it. Dude, that movie was dope. Capital D dope. It's like public domain film.info or something like that. There's a bunch of them. Like Wikimedia Commons is another place you can go. Dude, everything in that movie was amazing. Dude, it was shot amazing. The story behind it is amazing. Like the fact that that movie was just shot in everybody's free time in between shoots for King Kong. They were just like, oh, we got some extra time while we're not shooting this scene for King Kong. Let's shoot a few scenes for this movie. And they make this like 10 out of 10 masterpiece in their free time. A movie that, in my opinion, maybe not culturally, but in my opinion is better than fucking King Kong in every way. Every way. Every conceivable way. Like the original King Kong is amazing piece of film history, obviously super influential, really cool to watch the old, you know, stop motion and claymation and stuff. But when it comes right down to it, dude, that movie was the bee's knees, man. I love stumbling on like a gem like that, and you really don't get to do that unless you just try out some stuff. You've got to try out some different things, you know. You gotta watch a movie that you're not sure about. You gotta watch an old movie that you think like, oh, this is a gamble, but man, does it pay off. Dude, this month has been crazy for me discovering movies like that. Just movies like gaps in my, you know, film watching. Watched Inherit the Wind, which was amazing. Never saw that all the way through. In fact, I do think I saw Inherit the Wind all the way through when I was younger, maybe in school. But I'd fucking forgotten how amazing that movie was. Watched Night of the Hunter. Robert Mitchum. Oh my God, dude, that movie was crazy good. And then I just like stumble face first into The Most Dangerous Game. 1932 feels fresh. Like that movie was crazy fresh. 1932. Like so many people have this misconception about these old movies that they're like, oh, ancient and slow and boring and anachronistic. It's like, dude, that movie never stopped. It felt vital and visceral all the way through. You know what I mean? It was a timeless type of movie. It didn't have to be set in the time that it was set in. It could have been, oh man, I loved it. Just never let go. Perfect length too. Like these old movies knew that like some stories are just an hour. Boom, in and out. Is this on your recent streams? This was on a patron's Highdeology last night. So if you're not a patron, consider becoming one, because every month we get together and we do a special patrons only Highdeology, no plebs allowed. And last night we talked for about an hour and then we watched The Most Dangerous Game. It was great. Long movies bore you? There are bad long movies. There are movies that are kind of high on their own farts, and feel like, oh, I gotta be 4 hours long. But there are movies that are that long, 4 hours, 3.5 hours, that don't feel like it. Like, that's pacing. Like, that's it. 100%. That's just pacing. So you take a movie like Das Boot, which the director's cut of Das Boot is like 3 hours and change long. And I can sit down and watch that movie and it feels like it's an hour long because it just never falls down on the pacing. It never like fails to rev the engine when it needs to, you know what I mean? And so just masterfully paced piece of work needed to be that long, And then you take a movie like the one we watched last night, The Most Dangerous Game, which like putting out a full feature movie now that's only an hour long, people would complain, but oh my God, that was great. Didn't overstay its welcome. Yeah, Lord of the Rings, another great example. Casino is another great example of movies that, they're 2.5, 3 hours plus in some cases. Yeah, I'm in the same place. If you got a movie that's over long just for the sake of it, it sucks. You get a movie like Barry Lyndon that's just like a feast for the eyes and the ears. And, 2.5 hours can feel like an hour. And that's really the sign of quality that delineates the line between good and bad film. Well paced, poorly paced. But yeah, I was really, really just overjoyed to see that movie. Man, that movie lit me up. I was just like, wow. That's what I love about film, man. It just defies expectations so often for me. I was just like one shot after the next in that movie. I was just like, oh. If you have any kind of appreciation for like framing or the art of filming in black and white, lighting, and how hard it is to create a lighting environment in old black and white celluloid and shit, all these things, coupled with the just absolutely like top tier matte paintings and miniature work. It's a masterpiece, dude. It's a literal masterpiece. There were so many like shots in that movie that just took my breath away. Just like, oh. No, we're talking about The Most Dangerous Game. We watched that last night on a patron's Highdeology. I'm just gushing about it because it was phenomenal. Snowpiercer's pretty good, empty edits. Oh yeah, dude, Hitchcock. Dude, pretty much everything Hitchcock touched is worth checking out. I have yet to see a Hitchcock movie where I was like, that ain't his best. I haven't come close to seeing all of his films. Every time I watch a new Hitchcock movie, even if it's one of his really old films, I'm just like, whoa. We watched one from the 30s a while back called The 39 Steps. Like a spy noir kind of movie, and I was just like, man, blown away. I remember watching The 39 Steps. I thought it was so weird they didn't remove their overcoats indoors. Yeah, it's that noir look, man. It gives a sense that like of impermanence. Like it's one of those like little subliminal things that they do. You take your coat off when you're comfortable, right? You take your coat off if you're a gentleman in the 30s and you've got an overcoat on and you go indoors. You take your coat off if you're comfortable and planning on staying a while. And so just that little choice of having people wear their overcoats indoors lent a sense of, you know, like anxiety to the scenes. It's a good analysis, yeah. I know. Once you kind of, and I'm not claiming to be some kind of expert, dude. I never went to school for it. There are definitely people out there who are far better at talking about film than I am. But I'm telling you, once you start to learn a little bit of the language of film, it's so fun to talk and think about because you can see how much deeper the process is than it looks. Little things like that, like people wearing their overcoats indoors and you taking note of that, right? Lent a sense of anxiety to the movie and forward momentum to the movie. Nobody's ever safe. Nobody's ever comfortable. You're not safe enough to take your overcoat off because you're just going to have to go. You might have to run. You might have to fight. It's just so cool. It's that those little touches that go into film. There's nothing like it for me, you know. Well, that's not true. Watching stage shows is the only thing that really comes close to me because I'm, you know, having a experience being in those and acting in those and being a part of those. I know how much thought goes into every line. You ever see the video on forced perspective for Lord of the Rings? No. Yeah, that I know exactly the effect you're talking about. It's used in a bunch of movies where the camera is moving forward, but the focal distance is being simultaneously turned down. So it looks like the hallway or whatever you're moving towards is retreating as you go towards it. Creates this double layer of space and movement. I know exactly what you're talking about. Hitchcock was a magician with the camera, dude. He did shit that like is still praised when people talk about fine movies that are made now. You know what I mean? Like he was doing it back in the 30s. He invented a lot of it or popularized a lot of it. Just amazing. Like the one spot that I can remember that shot is used is you remember Kubrick uses it in The Shining when Danny sees the little girls when he's riding his little trike, and then he looks down the hallway and he sees them, and there's that shot of them standing there where it looks like they're moving away from you, but they're staying static in the center of the shot because he's using that double focal length. He's moving the camera towards them while zooming it out. And then you get that real stark close up of Danny, like, oh, dude, I love movies. It's another thing that I really love about movies is it's an evolving language. We've been talking about art a lot on these. And yesterday we were talking about fashion, you know, as an art form, and how it's an evolving, self-referential language. And movies are the same thing. Um, you know, these people are speaking the language of the people that came before them. I love that. These brilliant minds like Kubrick is, you know, he's taking all of that stuff that he's absorbed from immersing himself in film and referencing it. I went to the Shining Hotel, but they only used it for exterior shots. Yeah, the lodge that was used for the Shining. Yeah, it was used for a couple of shooting days for exteriors, and then everything else was built on a soundstage, like a maze. You know, different parts of the house. You don't see much of that art in today's movies. Totally could not agree less. Could not agree less, man. Like I said, dude, once you speak a little bit of the language of film and you know a little bit of these old references and these old tricks that were used in movies, you start to see them in modern films. There's still people making brilliantly conceived films. You just have to look for them in the same way that, like, not every movie from the 30s is worth your time. You know, just because The Most Dangerous Game is an unimpeachable masterpiece, one of the best films I've ever seen, 10 out of fucking 10. You know, you could watch a movie that came out the same year that's just kind of boring and passe. It's the same thing now. So much art in movies today. I just like seeing the intricacies of items that are chosen to be in frame or not. Oh yeah. There's so many little decisions made for the sake of immersion and callbacks to older filming techniques, callbacks to old directors and old films and old roles that are just expertly woven into this new narrative. Dude, you can find that kind of stuff. It's being made all the time. All the time. So, I'm not one of those people that's like, man, that was the golden age of film there. It's never been the same. Well, it has never been the same, but yeah, it's a pre-code. A lot of pre-code cinema it really defeats this idea that people have that movies are old-fashioned and boring and, you know, not action-packed and not challenging or offensive in any way. And you go watch pre-code cinema and you're just like, well, wait a minute. What is pre-code? Pre-code is like before the MPAA, or not the MPAA, before the, well, yeah, it's the MPAA. So before the quasi-governmental body that decides whether a movie is morally sound enough to come out and puts a rating on it. That's what pre-code cinema is. Yeah, the Hays Code. Yeah, there's a bunch of doo-doo movies from that era. You know, people remember the greats, and the others just kind of disappeared. There was tons of mediocre cinema made in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and 60s. Tons of completely unwatchable, thoughtless cinema made. Time-wasting, crappy, shittily shot, cheap, lame movies made. And there were a bunch of epic films made. There's a shot in Saving Private Ryan that I remember, and this is, dude, I haven't seen that movie in forever, but I still remember this shot because I thought, what a consideration. Do you guys remember? It's a very quick shot. There's a shot of a battle where a medic is attending to a dude that has been shot, and bullets are landing all around them. You know, it's one of those frenetic action scenes, and a bullet hits the medic's canteen. He's got a canteen on his hip, and a bullet hits that, and water starts coming out. And after about a second of water, blood starts coming out. And it's as you're panning across this shot. And I'm just like, oh my God, dude, what a consideration. Like, what an amazing little detail that took a lot of fucking work that you see for 2 seconds in the film. You know, blink and you'll miss it. It's amazing. Yeah. A lot of the scenes in Saving Private Ryan have a lot of those little moments. That's why when you ask World War II veterans and people that served in that war, like what movie captures the spirit of that war the best, a lot of them very much will just say Saving Private Ryan. It was hard for a lot of people to watch because it was so accurate. It really took people that were there back to it. And, you know, Spielberg was just utterly committed to recreating that in its totality, or as closely as he could, the feeling of it. Sadly, not a yeah. That whole generation is pretty much gone now. How did Spielberg go from that to like Ready Player One? I don't know. Excuse me. I don't know. Dude, that whole movie is filled with just like it's there's a reason I haven't seen it in years and years and years. Because even as a person that's never been in war or whatever, that's just a tough movie to watch, man. You know a lot about movies. That's cool. I really don't. I really don't. I'm actually I'm just a dude that watches a lot of movies. I am not an expert. I can't quote or reference every little classic film and shit. I'm nowhere near like a film major or some shit. But I have a layman's passion for movies. I love watching them. One of my major pastimes, one of my favorite things to do is to roll the dice on a movie, you know, and find something, because I not always, but I very routinely find something that blows my mind, something beautiful, something new, something fresh, even if it's old. I haven't watched a movie in a few years except last night. Wow. Well, you should, you know, if you liked that, you can find tons of that type of stuff. If you spent 10,000 hours doing something, you'd be counted as an expert, so you might be an expert as watching movies. Okay, well, yeah, watching movies, but I'm not an expert in talking about them or discussing them. I have, you know, I think if I took my layman's passion for movies, and added uh, an education at film school to it, I could really broaden the things that I talk about. But as it stands, I'm just a normal guy that's really enraptured by film. And I love learning little secrets about movies and how they did things and why they did things. I love that, movies are like a puzzle to me. And this is true. Once you realize that movies are about overt messages with oftentimes very subtle sub-themes and references, it's like a code. You know, you're looking at something that somebody made that they wanted to be perceived as this overarching thing, and it is by most people, but if you really look at it, there's references to old cinema, references to old literature, references to music, references to fashion, references to other movies. And all these things woven in, underlying philosophical plot lines that aren't overt. You start seeing all these things, it's like a little puzzle for your brain. That's what I love about it, man. It really, I'm very rarely more engaged than when I'm watching a really great piece of cinema or a really great play. Last movie I really loved was The Joker. And it's a good movie. I feel like there's been a lot of movies since then that are worth your time, but you're a stoner expert. All right, buddy. Good for you, buddy. But yeah, I love that about movies. I love that they're like a little Rubik's Cube for the brain. And there's some movies that are deep as you want them to be, you know. If you can think of it, the filmmaker probably did too. Right, hidden social commentary, hidden political commentary. And when I say hidden, not really hidden, just not overt. The best Joker, dude, this opinion gets me in so much trouble because people are so reverent of certain Joker performances. To me, the best Joker, and when I look at it, I mean the one that I think best embodies the way that I imagine the Joker, taking him out of the comics and putting him into the real world, is Jack Nicholson. Sorry. I love Heath Ledger's performance. I thought it was really great. I loved Joaquin Phoenix's performance. Thought it was really great. Those are both great Jokers. But yeah, Mark Hamill would definitely be up there on the list too. His vocal performance of the Joker in video games and cartoons is just iconic. But Nicholson was amazing, so menacing. Just absolutely like took the Joker. You remember how cringy it was when they took the Joker in Suicide Squad and tried to make him this like gangster character? Jared Leto, you know, they had him with a grill and face tats and all this stuff. Well, the Nicholson Joker is that, but done well. The Nicholson Joker is like, what would happen if you took this kind of cold-blooded killer gangster guy and, you know, broke his mind and scarred his face and turned him into this, you know, monster, this whimsical monster. Dude, it's great. It's a great performance. Totally underrated. Never rub another man's rhubarb. Finally saw Inception. It was built up to be this deep masterpiece, and I found it to be very underwhelming. There's so much you can do in dreams, but they're all meh action scenes. Yeah. Once again, Inception is like it's one of those layered onion type of movies. On the surface, it's just, in my opinion, a kind of cool action piece. But when you start to look at the movie and some of the little details about it, you see that there's an overarching philosophical story being told. Like, answer this question. Even though you hated the movie, at the end of that film, is he awake? Is Leonardo DiCaprio awake? Or is he asleep still? not to deter you from trying to answer it, but whatever answer you give is countered by an equally plausible answer. So the fact that here's how you have to think about Inception if you want to start to understand. Once you understand at the end of that film that is ambiguous whether or not the main character is awake or asleep in a scene where it's portrayed that he's awake, you have to apply that question to every scene in the film. When was this fucking guy awake? Was he ever? Think about it. The whole movie feels like a dream, even the non-dream sequences. He's a super dream soldier that recruits dream warriors to go into people's minds and steal secrets out of them. Huh? See, that's the thing. Was he ever? And you could say no. You could say yes. It's ambiguous. And that's just one example of how you can think about that movie in layers and get what you put into it out of it. In fact, that movie just implicitly tries to train you to think in layers. It's like dream layer 1, dream layer 2, dream layer 3. Well, what if dream layer 0 is a dream? What if it's actually dream layer 2, 3, 4? I could be a coma patient for all we know. Yep. Could be a crazy person that's in a medically induced coma, or a dead person. Could be just, I mean, there's heavy vibes of purgatory in that film. So it could have been a movie with a pseudo-religiously tinged message that never was overt about it. I mean, the dude's he's in limbo, right? He's in purgatory. He's in that fucking horrible place between heaven and hell. Just watched Shutter Island recently. Martin Scorsese movie. Actually watched Shutter Island with Amelia, what was it, 2 nights ago. Popped up on our Showtime app or whatever. I was like, oh shit. We'd both seen it before, but it's one of those movies that is worth a rewatch because it's another one of those movies where you have to question the truth of what's going on, you know? There's a conspiracy alleged in the film, and there's mental illness and psychosis alleged in the film. And really, you can go either way. You watch that movie, is he crazy, or has he stumbled onto a secret government research center and being played like a patsy? Is it real? Is it not? And that's the whole, like, life is but a dream principle, which shows up in movies over and over and over again. And if you think about it, overtly challenges everybody's perception of reality. If you take what you learn from the film, which is, all films are very human things, you take that and you look at your world with it, you have to question the same things, right? Like, wait a minute. Set aside Inception for a second. How do I know I'm awake right now? Well, it's cold. I can feel that on my skin. Okay. Your brain isn't powerful enough to create that effect. You know it is. Pretty much everybody's had an incredibly vivid dream. You know it is. So what if? I actually struggle with that question from time to time. Extremely vivid lucid dreams quite often. The way I know if I'm dreaming or not is to check the clock. You see what time it is, you're awake. Well, there you go. Do you read Sutter Kane? I do. I do read Sutter Kane. Do you want some, buddy? Another great movie that causes you to, fundamentally question the nature of reality. And in fact, the movie is just explicitly about that. There's a line in it where it's like, in a world of the insane, the sane are criminally insane. I'm butchering the quote, but in an entire world of insane people, it's the sane people that are locked up. And that idea is explicitly incepted into the film about a quarter of the way through. And if you're a movie watcher, you know that when a character says something like that, you're being invited to question what's real and what's fake and what's happening and what's a dream and what's a nightmare and what's reality. It's like a cue card for people that are, into movies. This movie is about challenging your notions of your personal reality. How do you know you're awake? How do you know you're asleep? How do you know you're living in a real environment and not an incredibly complex simulation? These are all explored heavily in some of the best films and most referential films, right? The Matrix, right? You can see the missile above me. The missile. What missile? What? Did you see the new one? Yeah, I did. I liked it. I know a lot of people didn't, but I liked it specifically because it was not what I thought it was going to be. I watched it with immense trepidation because I was just like, this is just going to be a schlock action movie. This is just going to be a ripoff, like, oh, look, it's the Matrix again. And I was wrong about that. And that's, kind of rare. I'm typically able to kind of sniff out these crappily conceived movies. And say what you want about the new Matrix movie. Like I said, it ain't perfect. But it actually challenged my notion of what, Lana Wachowski had to say. And really, I think was just like an emotional sounding board for Lana Wachowski, which to me is attractive in a movie because typically when people have big projects like this, they are either encouraged or forced to fall back from these self-indulgent type of films. But Lana Wachowski just basically made a tens of $1 million film with some huge actors in it that was a complete Mary Sue of herself, her own grievances with Hollywood and capitalism and the mental health industry, all laid bare. Yeah, that was a great, like it was awesome. She hated the Matrix more than anybody ever hated it. You're absolutely right, and that just came screaming out of the void in that movie. Is it known why Lily didn't get involved? I have no clue. No, the new Matrix was good. I thought there was some stuff in it that sucked. The worst thing about it to me was them aging up Niobe. So taking what's her name, Jada Pinkett Smith, and putting a horrible Prometheus, Peter Wayland level age makeup on her. Terrible decision. and seemed kind of meaningless. Like, seemed like something that could have been tweaked in the plot to make her, just have aged normally rather than making her an old 80-year-old lady, or trying to. So there was some stuff in the movie that was kind of like, but as far as like a watching experience, I had way more fun watching that movie than I thought I was, because I did not think that it was going to be a big middle finger from Lana Wachowski. Well, see, that's the thing, dude. The Merovingian scene. Very few people talk about it because it's such a weird scene. It comes out of nowhere. Like, all of the sudden, right? The party of Matrix warriors is beset by a bunch of 90s anachronisms, like literally rollerblading people, right? Dressed in cross colors gear, like from the early 90s and late 80s and shit. And then a Merovingian shows up. And if you actually listen to what he says throughout that very strange action scene, because he gives this rambling, monologue as everybody's fighting, he's a boomer. That was Lana Wachowski going like, I hate boomers. Listen to what he's saying. He's saying like, oh, we used to have class. We used to have real art, and now everybody is, looking at their phone and staring at their tablet all day, and I love how he just screams sequel, spinoff, reboot, and then spits and runs away. Yeah, I know. It's just like, this was Lana Wachowski going like, dude, I'm so sick of the Matrix. What I've created has dogged me all these years as a person that wants to create something different. I feel like I'm shackled by this property, like I'm expected by everybody to do nothing but the Matrix for the rest of my life because I happen to be the person that came up with the fucking Matrix. And the whole movie is that. Isn't it the Wachowski sisters? Yeah. What does that have to do with the price of rice in China? Is that still a salacious idea, the fact that there are trans people in the world? Well, you're the Merovingian, bro. And now every man is a woman, and every woman is a man. We used to know. I just love people that gotta like interject that when it has no bearing. Like, what bearing does that have on the discussion that we're having? Did you notice some like critiques of how like both ends of the trans identity kind of argument that's going on in our society? Did you notice that? Because that would be a cool way to bring it up. I noticed a little bit of that, but just like salaciously coming out and going like, isn't it the Wachowski sisters now? It's like, what a rhetorical question. Like, you already know the answer to that. Ugh. I just hate shit-stirring little fucking drama goblins. Little crotch goblin type of fucking people like that. Huh? I don't know what you're talking about. It's a critique of biological women, not trans. His point was that it's highly unlikely for a woman to want to create a philosophical movie like The Matrix. No. I think you're reading way more into a stupid comment than you think. But hey, what do I know? Women don't think. They don't. woman no can make movie. Didn't they create the Matrix as a metaphor for the experience of being trans in society? None of them have explicitly said so, but that is an interpretation that people have made of the Matrix. And I think I don't lend it a lot of credence. And here's why. It smacks of that thing that people do. Let's go off on a little tangent here, shall we? Just for a second. There's a psychological phenomenon in people that I find to be really interesting. And I don't know, it's probably called something. I call it false hindsight. Because once again, I'm just a layperson, right? But in my mind, I call it false hindsight, right? People love to act like they knew all along, right? It's just like a very human thing to not want people to know that you didn't see the truth behind something or whatever, right? And so when the Wachowski sisters came out and transitioned, there was this immediate contextualization of the Matrix through the eyes of a trans person. Hindsight bias, sure, that may be the technical term for it. So to give you an example of this, I was watching this, the first episode of this little docu-series last night called We Need to Talk About Cosby. I've been waiting for this to come out because it looked interesting to me. And it is kind of, like I said, I only watched like the first episode of it. And I think not even the whole first episode. But anyway, one of the things that started to turn me off about it was that it was just absolutely laced with hindsight bias. A lot of the people that were being interviewed, and there's a broad swath of people interviewed, it's basically a whole documentary about how people feel differently and perceive Cosby differently based on, you know, the more recent revelations that he's, you know, kind of a rapist. And so there are some people that's, you know, there's one compartment of their mind where they still revere this dude because he was just a like groundbreaking black comedian, just a groundbreaking comedian in general, set aside the blackness. But then as a black person, he was just absolutely, utterly, and completely groundbreaking. The first black dude to ever star in a show that wasn't explicitly trying to make black people look stupid or dumb or childlike. I Spy, right? Where Bill Cosby played an incredibly intelligent, super educated, empirically minded. He was the grounding force in that show. And it was the first time in history that a black person had been given a starring role in that show, in a show like that, where, like, once again, they weren't portrayed as like buffoonish or kid-like or silly or backwards or country or whatever the fuck. It was the first time that, you know, black people in America could turn on their TV and see an educated black dude. Like a competent, educated black dude. Pretty neat. And so he's that, and he's also this other thing. And that's what the show is about. But a lot of the people, in order to make sense of that dichotomy, which to me is just inherently, that's what it is. He is both a groundbreaking, boundary-crushing influence on Hollywood in favor of Black America, and thus a civil rights icon and a rapist. And if you have trouble with that, I suggest that you read a little bit about the duality of man and look a little bit inside of yourself and find some of the contradictions in yourself. They may not be as stark as they are in Cosby, but you'll find them. Human beings are not gingerbread men. They're not perfectly created, perfectly molded, perfectly baked little things with perfect little candy buttons. Human beings are complex and crazy and self-contradictory. Our psychology is just whimsical and evil at the same time. And there's a lot of people that have trouble just saying that. And so they go like, oh man, I kind of knew that there was something about Cosby all along. No, you didn't. And if you did, you didn't say shit about it until it came out. Once again, hindsight bias. Hey, baby. We're just talking about that Cosby thing and how, half the people that were being interviewed kind of knew. Oh, yeah, I always kind of thought, like, man, there's something a little off about this guy. It's like, no, you didn't. And if you did, you didn't say anything about it, Hannibal Buress rang the bell first. He gets a pass in my book. Well, yeah, because he was a dude that, like, came from nothing. And all of a sudden, he had this, like, burgeoning Hollywood career. And he starts hearing that there are all these people in Hollywood, like insiders, that are like, oh, yeah, Bill Cosby's a rapist, bro. Like, he's been raping women for 40 years. And he was like, what? And it was just kind of like, because Bill Cosby was such a powerful influence in Hollywood, it was just kind of implicit that, like, oh, yeah, here's an insider secret, but you better keep it to yourself because you don't want to cross Cosby. And thus MGM or whoever owns Cosby. You know what I mean? You don't want to do that. It's a career killer. There was no indication of Cosby being that type of person. That's not exactly true, but it just depends on how you perceive his comedy. The first episode of this goes into some of the bits that he used to do. And in retrospect, knowing that he was, at this time doing this stuff, or would in the very near future start doing this stuff, it's very easy to have a lot of hindsight bias and go like, that's not just a joke. That's him going like, oh yeah, I drug women and raped them. He did a whole bit about Spanish Fly, which, like everybody laughed at as a harmless joke, and he was hardly the only comedian to make a riff on Spanish Fly.
They showed clips of a whole movie called Spanish Fly.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was, just a culturally kind of thing. You could buy, I still remember going into like seedy bathrooms and stuff at clubs, and you could buy Spanish Fly and condoms.
Not like legit Spanish
No,
Fly.
It was just some flavoring thing that they did. But yeah, no, they were still trying to sell this idea that you could put a drug in a woman's drink or a man's drink and make them more willing to, you know what I mean? And so they look at that, and then they look at what he did, and they go like, oh, he's telling on himself. It's like very easy to want to look at it through that lens, because it means you weren't duped.
Yeah, and how many other fucking people in Hollywood did the same exact shit? He probably learned it from someone.
He was, like I said, he's not the first dude to make a joke about Spanish Fly.
I mean, like, in terms of, like, the drugging and stuff, someone probably told him about that. Like, hey, try this.
Probably, yeah. I mean, we know that Hollywood has had a very toxic culture when it comes to, like, trading sexual favors for roles and stuff like that. Like, that's been going on since Hollywood was Hollywood. So you have to imagine there's a lot of skeletons in that closet. A lot. The fact that Bill Cosby did this for 40 years and it remained an industry secret that long just goes to show you how much collusion and collaboration there probably was. There's this movie, dude, and you can still find it. It's called, hold on, let me think. Fuck. What is that movie called? An Open Secret. Have you ever seen that movie? Mm-hmm. It's a movie where a bunch of former child actors, who all of them were abused by the same ring of highly connected industry producer pedophiles, going all the way up to like people that were on the SAG board, SAG-AFTRA for the kids. Mm-hmm. and how they were farmed into these like situations where they were taken away from their parents because, like, oh, we're going to make your kid a star. This is what you've been working for. There were tons of these industry parents that were trying to get their kids roles. So they created this whole fake network. I can't even remember the name of it now, but it was like a network. It was like a cable TV network back in the dark days of cable where there was 180 channels, right? Well, they were one of them. And it was like drama and comedy shows that were geared towards teens and specifically teen boys, right? And pretty much everybody in these shows was just farmed in, like, they were taken from their parents. Their parents willingly were like, oh yeah, go be a star. And they were put up in this mansion. You know, they would give the parents a tour. Oh, here's where your kid's going to be living. Here's, you know, the pool, and here's their room, and here's their roommate. And they made it look like a big legit thing, but it was really just an excuse to get all these young boys away from their parents and start feeding them drugs and abusing them. And it's just story after story after story after story. Industry insider, Brian Singer. He's at these parties. All these dudes testify to it. So, yeah, there's some shit.
Yeah, like Roman Polanski, he obviously had friends doing the exact same shit.
Yeah.
He did it, what, at Jack Nicholson's house or something?
Something like that. I'm not exactly sure what the story is, but the lore is that it was Nicholson was involved somehow. It was either his suite or, you know, something. I don't know how it went down, but you understand that there's Woody Allen, yeah. Woody Allen, like, marries an Asian woman who has a child already, adopts her as his daughter, then dumps the Asian woman and starts messing around with a daughter while she's like 16.
And we've had 2 presidents back to back that have rape allegations.
Think about that. 2. And they're far from the only.
Yeah.
Bill Clinton was covered in that shit. But 2 sitting presidents back to back that have credible rape allegations against them. Yeah. The power brokers in society are doing some shady shit. This whole, like, Jeffrey Epstein airplane log is all too lurid. The fact that, like, you guys seen that Humana interview that Prince what's-his-fuck gave? Prince, Andrew, I think it is. What?
It's just power fucking takes down that veneer.
Yep.
There's a certain privacy with a certain level of wealth and influence.
I don't think that's true across the board, but I do think that there's an insider group. Like, here's the thing. I don't believe that everybody that's a fucking multi-trillionaire is trafficking in children. But I believe that everybody that's a multi-trillionaire knows the people that are doing it. And keeps hush-hush about it. And that's, to me, in my mind, just as bad. It's like the cops. People go like, oh, there's good cops and bad cops. Well, not really, right? Because the good cops all know the bad cops are on the take. But Brothers in Blue code keeps them from saying anything about it. And that's how you get these drug rings and exploitation rings and cops that beat people up and are protected.
Like Serpico.
Yeah.
Completely true story.
Yep.
Not like maybe exactly how the movie went, but
right.
Based on
just a cop that like a dude that actually cared about helping people that became a cop and found out that there was literally nobody in any precinct in New York that wasn't on the take and decided to like tell. He's like, I can't. They're not protecting people, they're exploiting them.
they're not solving crimes. They're just taking money from the biggest criminals.
Yeah. They're legitimizing crime by charging criminals a fee to engage in it. So that's a good cop.
And what happened to him?
And what happened as a result of what he did? Probably a temporary cutback on those things, and then slowly but surely, I mean, the NYPD to this day remains basically a gang organization. Like, it's just like accepted that it's internally corrupt.
LAPD, same shit.
Yeah. Just legitimized gangsters. Yeah. It's like the gangs of New York, dude. The cops are the natives. And we're all the dead rabbits. I mean, that's literally what happens in that movie. You know, like the political establishment hires an entire gang to enforce its will on the streets and force people to vote, intimidate people, crush any opposition to the party. That's such a good movie, man. I understand it's hard for some people to get into because it's made in this very, like, I don't know, overwrought style. It's overly stylized to the point of almost being a fantasy movie, and it's kind of a strange mix, but man. And it doesn't have the greatest ending either. It's like, it kind of like has one of those endings that instead of like, wow, it's like, you know, when you let air out of a balloon and it's like, it's one of those. You're like, oh, I hope this balloon just goes at some point. It never really does. It just kind of goes squee for about 10 minutes and then it dies, you know? Okay. But overall, that movie's great. Some awesome performances in it.
It's just, I think people don't realize, like, a lot of people have that temptation to do horrible things, and the slightest bit of power gives them the freedom to do those things.
Not only that, but the studies that we've show that people that have, like, tendencies towards sociopathy and psychopathy are not, as they're portrayed in the media, as gibbering psychopaths and shit. They typically are power-hungry people, and they have the mindset that's required to be hyper successful in a cutthroat capitalist system. And so what ends up happening is a lot of the people that just achieve that level are those types of people and prone to those extremes.
Or like with the cops, the veneer of like, overall I'm a good person, so anything's justifiable.
Right.
Or being kind of like nursed into being that kind of person, like, oh well, everyone else is doing it, so.
Right, it just becomes a part of like, oh, this is just a little side gig that I do. You know, I'm a pretty normal cop because, yeah, if I see somebody, you know, steal a purse or something, I'm going to try and stop them. But once a week, I take a big suitcase of money to a gangster and he takes 25 grand out of it and gives it to me, you know, whatever. It's my little side gig. Like, what? Isn't that the like type of shit you're supposed to be stopping as a cop?
It's like we're still fucking not that much different from wild animals. Most wild animals are selfish. Brutal.
Why do you think the system reflects that? Why do you think capitalism is the most selfishly brutal, like, institution that's ever existed on the planet? The most destructive, deadly corpse grinder of a fucking institution that's ever existed. And we're talking about a brutal species here. We're talking about a species that has a history of insane brutality. None of it even comes close to stacking up the misery that capitalism does. Why do you think that this is the end result of all of our fucking evolution? Because at the core of us, we're animals. And civilization, according to or the length of our existence, is new, brand new.
Like horrible atrocities that are pretty goddamn recent.
Ongoing.
There's no way to like evolve that out.
The
20
ongoing
years.
atrocities.
Yeah.
Go look at Liberia. That's an American atrocity that just every day is happening. Most of the global South has our dirty, greasy fingerprints all over it, and there's nothing but misery there.
Yeah, like Libya, like we quote unquote liberated them or helped them liberate, and there's like literal slavery going on.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, we export misery as our primary export. You want proof of it? Go visit the third world or watch a documentary about it and ask yourself, what would it be like to live like this every fucking day, to live and die in it? There are people that live in dumps. They live in dumps, literal dumps, not like, oh man, this place is a dump. They live in the dump.
They fucking pick trash.
They make a lean-to, and every day when they wake up, they go out into the dump trying to find copper wire and things that people have thrown away that they can resell on a secondary market. And that's their life, and they live and die in a dump. And then we've got all these facades too. People go like, oh yes, but some of these areas are dotted with these jewels. Like look at the UAE. Look at how beautiful that city is. Look at how beautiful Qatar is. You know what built Qatar? Slave labor. Literal slave labor. People being abducted from Africa. Ethnically different or religiously different people are gang pressed, taken from their homes with a promise of a good paying job, and then press ganged into building these beautiful cities. And they live in slums that surround the outskirts of these cities. When you go to Qatar, or however you say it, if you don't land in Dubai or whatever, if you land somewhere else and drive into Dubai, you go through the fucking worst slum you've ever seen to get to that shining, beautiful, rich city.
And America is very selective with fucking interventionism. Like the moral argument falls apart when you see how many people we ally with.
Oh yeah,
do horrible shit.
We're allied with those people. Saudi Arabia, horribly brutal, oppressive, religious fundamentalist government. People are still beheaded in the streets there for speaking out against religion.
Or being gay or whatever.
Or being gay. Women are not allowed to drive. Close allies of ours, though. Give me a fucking break.
It was never about fucking morality, starting war,
No.
intervention.
It's all about money. Money, influence, empire, natural resources, and exploitation. Somebody's got to bear the brunt.
But yeah, I think a lot of people interpret being anti-war as like, oh, well, you're just defending these countries. It's like, no, just recognizing that it's a completely situational morality.
I don't think it helps anything to use these countries like chess pieces against each other like we do.
Yeah.
And the proof of that is in the pudding. If you look at the average, like, lifestyle of an Iranian in the early 50s, it'll blow your mind.
Mm-hmm.
There, you can look at pictures from Iran in 1951, 52, before the Ayatollah Khomeini took over because of our interventionism, because we've displaced the Prime Minister Mossadegh and installed the Shah of Iran in a big CIA op. Yeah, remember that good one? You look at some pictures of Iran from the 50s, it looks, you'd think it was an American street. Women are wearing mini skirts and bob haircuts, and they just look like normal, capitalistic, happy American folk. And now look at that place. We did that. We created the material conditions that were necessary for a crazy religious zealot to rise up and take over a country. Afghanistan is another. That's a chess piece, and always has been, against the East. And the people that live there have been used and abused for centuries.
People arguing like, oh, let's go to war with China because they're doing bad things. It's like, we're not going to war with all these other smaller countries that are doing that same shit.
Don't we got a list?
It's always selective morality. Like, let's pick this boogeyman.
Yeah. Yeah, South America is another tragic example of American interventionism. Flourishing societies, and then we come there and we steal it. We destabilize it. Overturn their democratically elected leaders and install literal CIA operatives. That's the history of South America when it comes to its diplomatic relations with us.
Yeah, and now we're like starving Venezuela to death.
Yeah, because they have the audacity to have a political system that isn't ours. Cuts us out of the profit, gives it to the people. Oh, let's starve them. How moral we are.
North Korea, we've been starving for a long ass time. And
yeah.
What did it do? Nothing.
Yeah,
it runs the exact same way it always did.
Here's a regime that just heaps oppression on its people. You know what? You know what's going to teach them? Let's heap more oppression on their people. What?
Sanctions don't work.
Sanctions are just aimed at. They're never aimed at the top.
Yeah.
A lot of people assume sanctions work because they think that like the leader of a country that's under massive economic sanctions is going like, oh no, I don't have a penny. Oh, how am I going to eat tonight?
Or it's like trying to force the people to rise up. Like, oh, if we make them starve, then they'll rise up.
You're right. And really all that happens is like usually people just become more dependent, and it allows those governments to exploit them further because they can use the crisis as a piece of propaganda against the people imposing the sanctions and act like they're the good guys. Pass out just enough to keep people from starving or just under that, but blame it on everybody else.
Or the people that do rise up, it's like radicals.
Yeah.
It's like the Ukrainians that the U.S. is considering supporting now are like literal neo-Nazis.
Right. But because they're against Russia, hey, dude, any port in a storm. Whatever. Yeah, no. People have this idea, like I was saying, that like the leader of the country under sanction is sitting there going like, oh man, how am I going to keep the lights on in my palace? I better fold. No, they just take it from the people. They maintain exactly the same lifestyle, lavish, luxurious. And now it's even more at the expense of their people. And the people bear the brunt of it.
And who are the people going to blame? Their leader or the people placing sanctions on them?
Anytime you hear the word sanctions, you may as well just replace it with, we're going to starve this country. We're going to starve the people of this country.
And either hope they revolt or just let them fucking starve to death.
Because their leaders are insane zealots or crazy terrorists or
just not in line with
American values, we are going to starve them. May as well just replace the term. Sanctions is one of those, like, it's one of those softening terms. A sanction. Oh, I'm going to sanction you. Oh, you've been sanctioned. Sounds so soft, doesn't it? How about starved? That doesn't sound as soft, but it's the truth.
It's like so many of these like failed communist states failed because no one else in the global economy wanted to participate with them.
Yep. Do sanctions on major countries like Russia or China do anything? Maybe. Like, it's a little different. I'll give you that. When you're talking about economic sanctions against a well-developed economy, there is an impetus because that will cause oligarchs to lose money. So there is kind of a pressure point against bigger entities, but
even then, it's like they have just as much choice as these smaller countries to keep living
and
luxury.
the same principle applies. Those oligarchs don't sell their houses; they just start stealing from their workers. They start taking from the so it's the same thing. But at least I could see like, okay, we're applying like pressure to an entire economic system that has to be propped up by this government. But we're talking about a little place like North Korea. The only economic system that exists is the fiat one that they set up. It's a hermit kingdom. So when you're talking about starving, when you're talking about sanctions, you're talking about literally stopping food from coming into the country. You're not like throwing a monkey wrench in the little capitalistic ambitions of the country. You're starving it. You're starving the people of it.
Like even in a big country like Russia, like that can still starve people.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
I'm sniffing. Sniffing around.
He's just a big old teddy bear right now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he is.
You want to say hello?
Come on. Come see me. Come say hello. Come get in my lap. Come around here. Look, I lean back. Go do it. You're going to give me your ball instead? Okay, I'll throw it.
You always put it in the bush, Dad.
It's a big bush. It's hard to miss. Not to harp on an old hat topic, but this is, what we've been talking about in the last 20 minutes is one of the reasons and driving philosophical positions behind my refusal to participate in the electoral system. Because you don't have to drill down very far to find the hypocrisy in it. And, it doesn't matter if there's a D or an R next to the name of the president, or the D's or the R's are in control of the House or Senate if you're a North Korean. Because either side is going to sanction the shit out of you. You're going to starve.
Yeah, like Biden really just fucking drone strikes some children.
Yep. He just blew up a bunch of kids and was portrayed as a hero for doing it in the media. Inside the tense moments in the situation room where this dribbling old man decided to blow up a bunch of children. And you want me to participate in that, sign my name on it, and people call me emotional for not wanting to do that. I call myself principled. I'm not going to vote for a bloodthirsty dictator. Sorry. I'm not going to do it.
I can literally only think of one thing that Biden did that was objectively decreasing harm. That was a child tax credit, and it's ending.
Yeah. It temporarily decreased harm. And really, if you look at it, it was given in lieu of a stipend, which actually decreased harm in every other country that gave it. Mm-hmm. So it was given as here's a stopgap because we gave you literally some of you nothing. And some people $1,600, and some people at max $3,600 for the entirety of a year while you sat at home and couldn't work. So the child tax credit, in my opinion, number one, completely ignores people that don't have children. Mm-hmm. Number two, obviously just a temporary little stopgap to avoid doing what was right.
Yeah, And now all those parents are going to go in debt again
Yep.
because they were used to that level of money. Now they ain't going to get it.
Yep. What a win.
Oh yeah, the transgender people getting let back into the military.
Oh yeah, what a
oppress
win
other
there
countries.
too. Yeah, what a win there too. They get to be funneled into the meat grinder with everybody else. I mean, good. Like, it's their right. And I'm not going to say it's a negative to extend that to them, but I'm not going to celebrate that trans people are being funneled into an organization that, if you pull that organization, something like 60 to 70% of women that are in the army are abused sexually or physically at some point during their tenure, or both, or verbally. It's an abuse factory. Yay, now the trans people can join.
All the PTSD, which even just from the training, people can get PTSD.
Yep.
The VA really doesn't cover all that much.
Nope.
Like, my stepdad needed a lung transplant and they wouldn't cover it because they couldn't prove that the asbestos of him working in the stock rooms for years caused it.
They treat soldiers like garbage when they're done with them. You know how many veterans are homeless? It's shameful.
Your stepdad has like one hearing aid.
Yeah. My stepdad's a veteran. He gets his health. He's a retired veteran. He gets his health care through the VA. And he's an older guy. And he's got hearing aids. And he left his hearing aids out one night, and his little dog chewed one up. And he was told that the next set of hearing aids that he got had to last him something absurd 6 years or something, because they wouldn't cover it if he lost one. I'm just like, what? So you got an old man that can't hear without his hearing aids, due in large part to the fact that he spent his whole life around loud machinery, whether it was while he served in the army. He was an artilleryman in the army, so he was around those big... And then he worked the rest of his life in warehouses and factories, also known for causing hearing loss, and the dude can't hear anymore. And you're telling me that if this old dude leaves his hearing aid on the table and his little dog chews it up, or it drops out of his ear when he's fishing and falls into the lake, he's got to be deaf for 6 years? And that's just my family. That's just the people I know.
You'll ever get better health care being broke on Medicaid.
Yep.
America.
You want me to rah, sis, boom, bah for one of the dictators in this system? Mm-mm. Not I, McFly. No riding with Biden t-shirt for me, thank you. Pass. No raising money. No stumping. No, well, he's better than Trump, so maybe... You want me to support somebody? Give me a Bernie.
And
even then, it's hesitant support. But I would probably, if there was a Bernie, I might go out and vote, depending on, how the Bernie presented himself and how the Bernie ran. But sub that, you're gonna throw a joker like Joe Biden at me, and then try and use a scare tactic like he's any worse than... Dude, he's presided over continued brutality, continued fucking just horrible stuff at the border, against immigrants, against foreign nations. He just blew the heads off a bunch of kids. Yet he rah 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 says boom bah.
Didn't slow down COVID deaths at all.
Nope. Basically acted like we were all told Trump was going to act with COVID. Didn't take any decisive action on mandates or lockdowns, like he told us he was going to do. By the way, another broken promise.
Yeah, he's just like, vaccine or fuck you.
We were told, like, oh, you gotta vote for Biden because he's gonna be the one that, Trump will just let everybody run around and not mandate anything. How many people were duped into voting for this old warmonger because of that? And he just did exactly what they told him Trump would do. And you wanna look me in the face as an adult and make a harm reduction argument? Son. Daughter. Please.
A literal dollar to a food bank would do more.
Yeah. If you took all the time you spent arguing on Twitter in favor of Joe Biden, those of you that did, and I'm in the same boat, dude. I'm not claiming I went and used my free time like this, but I'm just saying, you want to make a difference in the world? You took every hour that you spent on Twitter camping out, making harm reduction arguments for Biden, and went and spent that at a food bank, you would have changed the lives of families, whole families of people. If you would have spent that time like organizing at your workplace, you could have the burgeoning starts of a union effort. What has more real world implications? Shifting one dried up old rapist off of the throne and putting another one on there? Or starting a local union that changes the way that your job works and your community works? What should we be putting our political will towards? Not the opera, not the soap opera. The oligarchs took that over a long time ago. And they've been putting on the same All My Children soap opera every fucking day and funneling all of this political fire away from things that could actually change the world and into this ongoing, like, are they going to do it? Or are they not going to do it? Well, let me contextualize why they didn't do it. Oh, it's not magic. You can't just like have a plurality. You can't just like have a majority in everything and expect them to do a single thing. I mean, that's not the way it works. I was tired of it, man. There's no way. That's the wall you got to get over with me. It's a tall one. There's a razor wire at the top of it. You better come prepared. So far, nobody's had the tools. Everybody just kind of like goes through this cycle of like, oh yeah, this is all bullshit. And then it starts up again and Biden's COVID policy is identical to Trump. Yep. More dead under him, 900K deaths in this country, mostly in 2020 under Biden. Yep. No mandates. No national enforced and backed lockdown. No stipend for people to keep them home so that we could fight against this.
Yeah, it's like
Nothing.
Vaccines don't work unless you reach herd immunity. We never did.
There was never even a chance we were going to do it the normal way or the vaccinated way. Now we're going to reach herd immunity through probably another 1 million people dying, maybe even more. It's going to be like the flu. It's just going to kill a couple fucking 10,000 people every year.
Yeah, Now they're like clapping like COVID's over because Omicron is infecting everyone.
What if the next variant is way more deadly? Instead of just being more transmissible like Omicron was, what if the next variant is way more likely to give you pneumonia? You'd be clapping then? No, you won't be. So I don't know, man. Let's give me a break with that. Rant over. I'm done talking about that now. We're not going to go any further down that rabbit hole. Hello.
You say hello to the people now.
You say hello. Come on. Come over here. Come over here. Say hello. At least say hello. At least say hello. Come over here. You come this way. You jump up. Yeah. Come on. Get up here.
People get to see the back of your head.
Day.
That's all you get.
Give it. Hand it.
Hey, it bounced.
Yep. Bush bounce. Bush bounce. Anyway, I think I'm done. Toodles.